Hey, welcome back to the Cognitive Fitness Coach podcast. Thanks again for push and play. Today we have a guest who knows a thing or two about mental resilience, about performance optimization, and pushing past limits. This is Chris Gingrich. He spent 18 years in the military, including multiple combat deployments for the United States Marines and Special Operations Forces. And over half his career was spent working alongside the United States Navy SEALs. After years of high stakes decision making under extreme pressure, Chris has transitioned into coaching, where he now helps athletes, special operations candidates, and high performers develop unshakable confidence and master their flow state. Through his 4-week mental performance coaching program and cold water immersion training, he's guiding people to break through mental barriers and optimize their potential. In this episode, we're going to be talking some about the psychology of peak performance, cultivation of resilience, and overcoming negative self-talk. We'll look at cold water immersion and its impact on our mental toughness. We'll also look at practical strategies that you can use today to elevate your mindset. So whether you're an athlete, a high performer, or just someone looking to level up, you don't want to miss this conversation. So let's get into it. Chris, how you doing, man?
Yeah, good, good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's a
Awesome.
beautiful morning here. As I was sharing before we hit record, I've done my breath work, I've done my
Yeah,
cold shower, sipping on a nice cup of coffee, and we're ready to rock.
right on. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do it.
So you and I, we share a lot of commonalities, man. Like we have some parallel paths for sure. So we both were in the
Yeah,
Navy, and then come to find out, we even served at the same command together for a little while at Naval Special
right.
Warfare Development Group. I was there for a little over a decade, and you, how long were you there?
About 7 years.
Yeah, and you were
Yeah,
in dive ops. You were doing dive ops, right?
yeah. I was with Dive Ops and then attached to Gold Squadron.
Nice,
So
nice. Yeah.
deployed. All my deployments were with them and training and all of that with Gold Squadron. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I started out there as logistics and then went through a selection and training process where I ended up going into the squadrons as well, but I was on the mobility side. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't doing
Cool.
no diving, at least not intentionally. If I was diving, it
Right.
was a bad day.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't want to be in the water at all, honestly. I'm a good swimmer. That's why I used to joke and say I don't have to be a good swimmer because I'm a good parachutist, so I just have to land really close to the boat.
There you go. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. That's it.
Yeah. So how did you initially get into the military? Like, what was it that drew you into the military?
Yeah, so my father's retired Navy. He was a Navy diver, saturation diver, and grew up, on the coast my whole life basically. And he would, go out to sea. He was on ship, and he'd, go out to sea, and he'd come back all tan, and have all these like cool souvenirs and all these like cool things he'd bring back to the family. And I was like, man, that's such a cool job to like go out and lay out on the beach and go swim and dive and all these
Right.
things in my head as a kid. I'm thinking, oh, scuba diving and swimming with fish and all these different things, when in reality it was much much different than my child imagination. And
Yeah.
so I went to college for a very short period of time to play soccer, and just realized that I was really immature, and I just wasn't ready for college, and to be out on my
Yeah.
own really at that point. And I knew I was going to go in the Navy at some point, but my parents never pushed it, which I think I think was pretty vital in my decision making for that. And even when I did decide to go in, they, were very adamant on checking out all the branches and looking at all of them
Mm,
and finding a job in each of them that you really like. And that if something, were to happen, you could at least fall back on that training in civilian and
yeah.
then, have something like that. And so, um, I think that was some great advice. And I really appreciated my parents kind of instilling that, to like look at everything and look at all the branches and find different things that you like and that
Mm,
sort of thing. So yeah, after college and working and trying to find my niche, I kind of delayed the inevitable and went in when I was 26.
oh wow.
Um,
So you joined a little
yeah, yeah.
later. Yeah.
Yeah. So I played a little semi-pro soccer for a bit, and then just worked a bunch of different jobs, just trying to find my way and my niche, and find out about myself. And just nothing was striking me, And
Yeah, yeah.
so went to the Navy, and 18 years later, yeah.
Yeah, so we share that in common too. So I didn't join until I was almost 24, and which is funny. Like you don't, I mean, now that I'm 51, it's like I look back and 24 certainly isn't old. But when you were in boot camp at 24 and 26, like they treated
Right.
you like you were a grandpa, like you were like the
Right.
old
Yeah.
guy, right?
Yeah. And yeah, same thing with me. I was like, as soon as I went to the Marines, I was 27. I think I was 27 by that time, maybe 28. And,
Yeah,
I'm the oldest guy in the platoon, outside of, the higher ups and officers and stuff. And even, a lot of them I was older than. So, but yeah, I completely feel for you in that sense where I was like grandpa to everybody
yeah,
and that sort of thing. But still new, just like all them,
yeah.
but just had a little bit more life experience. So
Yeah, so you alluded to like that it didn't quite, would you, is it safe to say it didn't quite meet the expectations that you had when your dad was coming back 10 with like, all these
right.
souvenirs and treasures? What was it like
Yeah.
for you? Like what was, did it meet the expectation at all for you, or how did it go?
Yeah, I think it did in a different way, obviously, being an adult at that point and really kind of knowing who I am or who I thought I was like as an athlete,
Mm,
all my life and then in college for a little bit and even afterwards. I feel like I knew myself pretty well
mhm.
until I went in and there wasn't anything negative about it, but I learned a lot more about myself going through, those different schools and pipelines and training and all these different
Yeah.
things that really kind of opened me up to, wow, I thought that I had a good head and, on my shoulders and I was thinking straight and clear and, I had
Mm,
these visions of different things, but when you get to these schools and trainings and pipelines and all these things, you kind of realize that like, well, I have a lot more pressure on myself. And, this training isn't just training for me, but it's potentially life-saving training, for myself
yeah.
and for other people. And then especially being a corpsman, I felt a little bit more added pressure sometimes with that.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah, so that was your rating, as we would call it in the Navy. That's your job,
right,
corpsman. And a corpsman, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what a corpsman is would it be safe to say kind of like an emergency medical technician, EMT, in a
right.
way? I don't know if
Yeah.
you can hear that. If anyone can hear that, if anyone's picking that up, there's some banging going on. I shared them actually have construction going on at my house right now. So this is very raw and unfiltered. You might hear a little bang, 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 bang. That's them
Yeah.
putting up a wall at my house right now. So, all right, back to the podcast. So, you're a corpsman, you're an EMT, and then also on top of that, you're getting other specialized training as well. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So after my first deployment with the Marines to Iraq in 2003, when that kicked off after 9/11, I decided to go to dive school, Navy dive school. And
Mm,
I really loved medicine. I loved being a corpsman. But I wanted to work with, I guess, maybe more like-minded guys or guys that can kind of think on the fly and would have a say in different things and guys would listen, rather than starting at the bottom and being E nothing and everybody just tells you to be quiet and take the
mm,
orders and go and do what you're told kind of thing. But
mhm,
um yeah, and so yeah, I graduated 6 months after of dive school as a diving medical technician. So
mm.
on top of being a corpsman and having a deployment experience as a corpsman, I also have the diving specialty now at that point, and that's what kind of kept me within the special programs or special operations community
Yeah.
after that. So
And that's how you ended up getting up to Naval Special Warfare Development Group?
correct, yeah. So right
Yeah.
after dive school, I went to EOD. I did a tour with EOD out in San Diego.
Okay.
Lots of training and diving and demolition stuff. I went back to Panama City for demo school and for some other diving and Didn't deploy with them, but just always ready, just always diving and training and all of it. And then when my time was up there, I got a call from Dev Group, and at the time, it was all recommendation only. You couldn't
Wow.
talk to the detailer or ask to come screen or whatever. So
Yeah.
I got a phone call, and they were like, "Hey, we heard that you might be interested in coming in and trying out and screening, and would you like to come out?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And less than a week later, I had a ticket, and I was on my way out to Virginia Beach.
That's amazing, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really special place for sure in my heart.
Hmm.
And yeah, my life changed forever when I walked into that place, for the
Absolutely.
better.
100%.
And it's funny, I like to know how like people got there. I got there by lying to my chain of command. I told them I had a dental appointment one day because they wouldn't let me go to the screening. So I was like, "Well, I got a
Yeah.
dental appointment," and then I tracked down the people that were doing the screenings. Um, and then and they told me, my chain of command told me they were only looking for a certain rate, which was builders, and I was a mechanic at the time. So I told them like, hey, I know you're not looking for mechanics, but I'd like to talk to you. And you're like, that's what we're here for. We're only looking for mechanics. Like, who told you that? So then I ratted out my entire chain of command.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like,
Wow.
these sons of bitches. Because I mean, who in their right mind like wants to lose all their best performers out of their workforce, right? And that's what
Sure.
development group does. They come around and they scoop up all your high performers and take them away, and then you never see them again. Like that's
Right.
it.
Yeah,
They're never going
absolutely.
back if they
Yeah.
work out well. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
the most part. Yeah.
yeah, cool, man. So
Yeah.
you with the Marines in Iraq, with the EOD, and then on to development group, you
Mm.
must have faced some pretty challenging moments on deployments and in training and such. So can you talk about any of these like really challenging points, essentially mentally challenging points, and how you push through them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think, and I'm sure you've probably heard this, that, civilian life or regular, daytime life is so much harder than being on deployment. And I think that's really true.
Mm,
I think it's easier to be on deployment and be overseas than, to go through training and to go through these pipelines and, even civilian life, as well. But, yeah, I think, Sear was a big one.
mm,
To keep yourself mentally sound after, being in the box for a couple days and hallucinating and
yeah.
imagining things and seeing things and all of that. And so that was a tough one to really kind of keep my wits and keep calm and know what I'm supposed to say and all the things
Mm,
that are involved in going to Sear. So I think that was a tough one. And believe it or not, I think static line jump master was another one that was pretty difficult, I think.
mm,
And I made it through. So when you take the final, you get, I think it's two or three tries, I think. So if you fail the first try, you stay there, like you don't go home or go back to your command and then come back. You stay there,
mm,
you get a couple hours, I think, to like review all your things, then you go in for your test. And
mm,
I think it was on my last try before they were like, okay, you're done.
mm.
And I remember this was probably one of the first times that I really implemented the breathing techniques and stuff that I had heard about, and I hadn't necessarily tried so much, but it was always like, oh man, I can't clear my head. I have all these thoughts and all
Nice.
these things that I thought were wrong at the time, and so I just kind of gave up on it. But
Mm,
that day, I remember specifically like closing my eyes, taking a couple of deep breaths in through my nose and slow out through my mouth, and
mm,
just like reiterating to myself the positive self-talk of like, I know
yeah.
this stuff. Like I know it. I just gotta focus and be smooth with it. Don't rush
Yeah.
things and don't force it and all of that. And so I think that day or that testing, that time was one I think that really stands out to me of like, whoa, like this kind of
Mm,
worked. I
mm-hmm.
talk to myself in the third person like I always do.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if it's not Gingrich, get your head out of your ass, then it's usually like, all right, Gingrich, you got this. Like, let's, slow it down, let's breathe, let's
Hmm.
focus. It was all I just was reiterating this positive self-talk and things that I already knew, but I was trying
Yeah,
to reinforce it to myself, to calm down and slow down and think
yeah.
and look for the things that they're trying to stump you on and that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And so I think that was one that really stood out. And that I think really from there really kind of I think started a little bit of that positive self-talk breathing,
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah,
Amazing.
so I think those two things really stood out.
That's, I think that's funny, and that maybe the audience is like thinking to themselves like, wait, hold on, like it's more stressful to be in home port and in training than in a combat environment, and I totally relate to that because
Yeah,
what folks don't realize is like on deployment is you're super focused and you have this one mission, one mind that you're focused on. This is what
right.
we're doing. And then
Absolutely. Yeah.
when you're in a home port in a training environment, now you're torn between all these other things of like man, my wife and kids are like right down the road and I'm doing this and I'm doing
Right.
that. And it's like it seems like it simplifies things. Just get me on deployment, show me where my rack is, where do I
Yep.
sleep, where's the chow hall, where are
Right.
the showers, and where's the skiff, and when's the next briefing, and when are we going
Right.
out?
Yeah, absolutely. Nailed it all for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
And then you shared about SEER, and if anyone that doesn't know, I had to look it up real quick because I even forgot it what it stands for. SEER is a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape school. So it's
Yeah.
basically a school where they teach you how to survive as being a prisoner of war or a government detainee or something like that. And you talked about being in the box, and I'm also familiar with that box, man. And is that they literally put me in a closet for 3 days. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah,
people are
it's
like, that
tough.
sounds a little extreme. It's like it was extreme. Like, trust me,
Yeah.
you think we're kidding. There was a coffee can that I used as my bathroom. I
Yes.
barely
Yep.
ate. I
Yep.
hallucinated like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
I had all of these thoughts running through my head of like visions of like just negative things that like I kept envisioning that I tore up my orders for some reason. And I remember
Mhm.
right when I like they finally got me out of there and like the practical part stopped. I had to find my orders. Like I had to go into my backpack and like, where are my orders
Oh,
for some
wow.
reason? I was like obsessed with these orders for some reason. And
Yeah.
at one point I remember thinking like, is this actually real? Like was there a mix up? Did I get on the wrong plane? Like
Right.
after 3 days I began to crack. It was like, whew, it's
Yeah.
some of the best training that I never ever want to go through again as I come.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I tell people all the time, that's the best, worst school to ever go to. It's a great school, but you never want to be in a situation to have to use those techniques and things.
No.
So yeah.
Yeah, it really, yeah, I learned a lot about myself in 3 days locked
Hmm.
inside a closet. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and same I can relate to with like using the breath techniques. Same here. The first time I tapped into box breathing was during a shooting school, and
Mm.
I was, they had us, it was like on a Friday, and it was like a Monster Mash type thing, like a, kind of like a all morning event where
Yeah.
we did this big O course and such, and then we had to shoot targets and such. And then the
Hmm.
last obstacle was no kidding. They put a cadre up in a tree, and we had to climb this caving ladder up the tree and get one 9 millimeter bullet, and then climb back down, and then load that one 9 millimeter bullet into our
Yeah.
pistol and shoot a head plate down that was 25 meters away. And if we missed it, you had to go through the whole entire thing again. So you had one
Yeah.
shot. At the end, it was
Yeah.
all this by one shot. And it was so hot that day and so humid. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I just want to go inside. I just want to get in the
Right.
air conditioner. I just want to watch Wheel of Fortune and eat an ice cream and relax. And
Yeah.
dude, I sat on that line and I remember thinking, like, all right, here's the point where I should institute like this breath technique that someone had taught me about. And I did
Yeah.
box breathing for the first time in a practical application to calm my nervous system. And
Yeah.
pushed out, squeezed, and boom. Thank
Nice.
goodness that first round
Yeah.
hit the target because I didn't want to do any of that stuff again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure we went to the same school because I had a very
Mhm.
similar experience, except mine was in the wintertime.
Oh,
And out there in the wintertime, it gets pretty cold and there's a pool
yeah.
back there,
Yep.
and the pool was frozen over. And we had a very similar thing where we shot 5.56 downrange, and if we missed, they would throw one round in the pool. They would break the ice and throw a round at the bottom of the pool, and so we'd have to dive in the pool, get that one round, go back, load it, and then take our shot like
Oh my
wet and
gosh.
cold and all of the things. Yeah.
Wow.
Needless to say, I missed my first one, and I didn't miss the second one after that. So,
Nice.
um,
Wow, that's
yeah,
that's something. Yeah, those cadre are really good at that kind of stuff.
they're
And
pretty imaginative. Yeah.
making things miserable and of great learning experiences.
Yes.
So yeah, so you've gone through all of that, and then you're coming up towards the tail end of your career. And so, do you want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about getting out of the military and how
Yeah,
the challenge
yeah,
you faced there at 18
yeah,
years?
absolutely. Yeah. So, I was going through a divorce, or I had just gone through a divorce, and
Mhm.
it was very unexpected. It was right when I was leaving Dev Group and going to my next duty station, which was Buds. I was going there to be an instructor for second phase. And
Mm,
on my way to drive out there, my wife at the time called me and said, "Hey, it's not working out. I'm leaving. I'm taking
mm,
our son, and we're going and moving." And that was that. And so obviously I had a really, really hard time. And now I'm the guy checking into the command who's got marriage problems, and no one likes that. And so I was going through all of that stuff, and I was really drinking a lot to kind of cope and deal
mm,
with that and my divorce and not having my son there in San Diego, and they were back here on the East Coast, and um just not being able to see when I want. And so everything was just very unexpected and out of the blue. And so I started drinking, and I was drinking a lot. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I was one of those people that I could drink like, most of the night and sleep for a couple hours and not have a hangover the next day. And so I
mhm,
would get up, I'd go PT with the class or with the other instructors or on my own or whatever we were doing that day, and you know
mhm.
be good to go for work, and then finish up work and shower and change and then go out and have dinner and drink. And so I did that for a while, and I ended up getting a DUI, and I didn't hurt anybody or get into an accident or anything like that. I was speeding a little bit over, and I got pulled over, and then they noticed that I had been drinking. And yeah, they took me and towed my car, and I ended up having to call my chief, and or actually called a couple other buddies at Dev Group, or yeah, from Dev Group, but out in San Diego, and then was just, hey, I need some help, and trying to get some help from some of the guys I worked with. I was at a new command, didn't really know a lot of guys, didn't know a lot of of those guys that were there. And so I called some buddies from back here on the East Coast, and just needed to kind of vent and figure out what I was doing and what was going on, and all this stuff. And so anyway, um I went to Captain's Mast, and I got a lawyer, and she was like, "Hey, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. You have a really, your career is basically impeccable. You've never been in trouble. You've got, all these awards and so on and so forth." And uh, went through the whole thing, and it took them 30 minutes to decide that they were going to discharge me. And so yeah, 17 years and 3 months, I believe it was. Um, and they released me. I think I got my orders in like a month, and I was out.
Indeed.
So had no backup plan. All my money that I had saved all went through to my divorce and lawyers and the whole thing. And so I didn't have anything saved up. I didn't have any kind of direction of what I was going to do afterwards or where I was going to go. I had to tell my landlord like, hey, I'm moving and I can't stay here. And, so I moved back home to Charleston and moved back in with my family and
Damn.
um yeah, and then just looked for work. And that was a whole nother struggle, after that and getting out
Hmm.
and the emotions and feeling a certain way and looking at myself a certain way, negatively
Yeah.
and it took a few years to kind of get out of that. But yeah.
Yeah, dude. So that more than SEER or static line jump master school sounds to be like the most mentally challenging part of your life. Um,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that really rocked you to your soul, you know?
yeah.
And I've
Yeah,
been there
absolutely.
too, man. I've been there. Like I also got a DUI. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. Can you hear that?
You
All right.
froze up there for a sec.
Okay. Yeah, they are drilling on the wall back there. It's really making a big racket. So I turned on some audio setting to block it, and I think it blocked everything. But
Okay,
it's okay.
yeah.
So yeah, I also had that, man, and I also went to a really, really dark place where I got in trouble in the military as well. And it was a big
Mm,
turning point for me, though. It was something that I look back on today, and I'm grateful for it because it set me on a different path.
mm.
Did you also have an experience like that, or how did you turn that around, going from what you
Yeah, that's a
were
good
to?
question too. It took a couple of years, honestly. Like I thought I was a failure, and I thought, I disappointed myself and my family and friends, and my goal was to retire and make chief, and the whole thing, and yeah, I came home and I had nothing. Gosh, I don't even remember. I think it was like 49. I was like in my early 40s. And so I moved back home. I was living with my parents and like, what am I going to do with my life? And I just totally kind of threw me upside down, and so I went to this dark place as well. And I worked a couple different jobs and just, none of it was just I wasn't into any of it at all. I didn't like it. I was doing some sales stuff and it wasn't me. And I think, that as well, on top of not enjoying it, on top of being kicked out of the military, on top of living at home with my parents, on top of being divorced. So I had all of these things that, were on my shoulders and that I was kind of carrying around. And yeah, there was a month where I really sat around with my pistol and really contemplated life and contemplated, being here and yeah, all these things. And so I had tried, I'd gone to therapy, I was on, medication and all the things and I had tried uh meditating and on my own. It wasn't anything that I went to a class or anything like that. I was doing yoga and had enjoyed yoga for years prior. And so I was like, okay, let me go do some yoga. Let me just try to decompress a little bit and try to let some of this go. And that wasn't working. And so finally, I was like, all right, I saw this Wim Hof thing in online, and Wim Hof had it wasn't him, but I think one of the guys that worked for him or something came to Dev Group to like teach one of the squadrons, and I remember hearing about it, and so I knew of him, but I didn't know the extent, and so I started doing a little research and looking him up, and was like, oh, he's the guy with the ice bath. He's and I finally put it all together, and so finally, I was like, well, I'm gonna sign up for this course. It was a 3-day Wim Hof course, and I told myself I'm gonna give myself this weekend, and if
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel any better, then I'm gonna you know I'm gonna be gone. I'm gonna be done. And so
Wow.
that whole week, I really just kind of I wrote letters and I was going through all of these different emotions and all these different things and finally I went to the class that Friday. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I went to that class on Friday and did our first ice bath and we had to do 5 minutes. I think it was 5 minutes. And then we could get out. And I remember getting in a tub and the instructor was right there in front of me and he was like, okay, breathe, relax, talking you through it. Cause when you get in, breathing really heavy and trying to catch your breath and all these different things and the physiological response. And he was talking me through all these things. So then, that helped a ton and finally got into being relaxed and kind of embrace it and kind of deal with it. And then I remember when I got home, we kind of ended it soon after that. We were pretty much done for the day. And I remember going home that afternoon and just bawling and like, oh my God, I don't know what it did. I don't know what it triggered. I don't know what it released. I don't know, all these things. But I went home and I bawled my eyes out and was like, I gotta, there's something to this. And that was kind of like the start of my personal ice bath journey and my journey to overcome and accept this and be okay with it. And hence, talking, on here about it. And before I would never tell people about it. I
Mm.
always thought that there was this stigma or thing attached to it, like, oh, he got kicked out for a DUI, oh, he must be a drunk, or he must be this, or he must be, there's all
Yeah.
these, stereotypes with that. And
Yeah.
so I didn't tell people for years
Mm.
um, that I had, been kicked out for DUI. And it wasn't until probably 3 years ago, maybe, that I was finally like, you know what? This is part of me. It's part of my past. I'm past it. I've gotten over it. I've accepted it.
Yeah.
And I'm moving on from it. It doesn't define me anymore.
Yeah.
And I still had a really great career. Like I don't think I had a bad career. I don't think that one thing made my entire career, bad
Mm.
or negative or not worth it. But yeah, and so just moved on from it and I've accepted it and I'm okay with it now. And I don't have those
Yeah.
same feelings and identity attached to it.
Yeah. It's a really powerful story, man.
Yeah,
It's
thanks.
really powerful. And again, like I'm just blown away by the parallels of our story because I too like have a story about that. What with mindfulness meditation, same thing. Like where I went to a mindfulness meditation, and then I remember thinking like, I don't know what the hell just happened. Like I don't know what they did to me in there, but I felt better, and I ended up like
You froze
being,
up. You froze
I
up
ended up
again.
being like obsessed with that. Like I like so.
Okay. You froze up again for a
Oh
few.
my goodness, dude, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Like the
That's all
internet
right.
is just failing us here.
It's all
Oh
right.
man, this might be an episode where I have to do a lot of editing after all.
All right.
Oh
Yeah.
man. But yeah, so I was saying it's like a really powerful story. And I also
Mhm.
have like a parallel story of that. It was like when I went to a mindfulness meditation for my first time, and it like I don't know what happened, but I know that I felt so much better afterwards that I became obsessed with that path.
Mhm.
So I think it's really powerful when we have these personal connections to these practices as something that really helped you, and now you want to
Mhm.
help others with it as well.
Right.
Yeah, and I also really appreciate you sharing it and breaking some of that stigma around, these things, these challenging parts of our life, because I
Mhm.
think as Brene Brown talks about, like with vulnerability, it's like now you and I and the audience that's listening, like we're better connected. We know each other that much better. And then you're
Right.
more
Yeah.
comfortable in your skin after letting it out, and as
Mhm.
as anyone else would be.
Right. Yeah.
So from there, how much longer was it after you were out of the military that you began your coaching practice?
Yeah. So I got out in 2018. I lived at home for almost a year and then I moved here. I'm in East Tennessee now, near my son. And so yeah, I get to see him a lot more often now and be a bigger part of his life and vice versa. And so I moved here. I immediately went back to school reluctantly and got my degree in kinesiology and uh, graduated in 21, I believe. And then, so while I was there, my senior year, my last year there, I was taking a course for kinesiology degree, and I was telling my instructor that I had some experience in there's a lot of the stuff we were talking about. It was like an anatomy, class or course. And, I just let him know that, it was easy for me, just with my background experience. And I said, hey, if there's anybody who's struggling, I'd be happy to help them out and kind of, tutor or, support or help in any way. And that kind of started the questions from him to like, oh, well, what's your background and where'd you come from? And so then that, the being a corpsman in the military and deployments and all that stuff kind of came out. And he was like, man, I've got to introduce you to the sports doctor here at school. And so I got introduced to him, and he, kind of repeated the same things to him. And he was like, oh my gosh, I got to introduce you to the baseball coach. And so got introduced to the baseball coach, and again, same thing, had a little conversation with him. And he was like, man, I would love to have you come out and talk to our team, sometime this week, whatever, about whatever, it can be anything that you want that maybe is relatable from the military to baseball or military to life to baseball, however
Mhm.
I wanted to kind of, blend it or incorporate it. And so I think I talked to him about teamwork. And as you know, obviously being with the teams and being with, people in the military, you have to have that kind of camaraderie and team and team building, teamwork. And so I talked to him for like 10 minutes about teamwork and how it related to baseball and how it related to life and all these things. And he called me that afternoon after I left. And he was like, man, you wouldn't believe the feedback that I got. Would you come back next week? And I came back the next week and talked about something else. And then he called me and was like, can you come back the next week? And then before I knew it, he was like, hey, can you come back like every week or every other week for the rest of the year, even if you can do that? And I was like,
Nice.
yeah, I'm good. I can do that. If I can, I'll let you know, obviously. But yeah, I'm good. Like, let's do it. And so
Yeah.
it was probably 6 months in afterwards, and I was like, man, I really enjoyed it. And I was like, and there's something to this. Like I'm enjoying this. I like talking to people about this. What is it that I can do with this thing, And uh I started researching stuff about, being maybe a speaker or, all these different things that I was looking at to kind of relate. And I found, mental performance. And I was
Nice.
like, that's it. Like, let me try this. Let me see if I can incorporate this somehow. And, this confidence building and teamwork and all
Hmm.
these different things and different topics that, are all relatable. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was about 2.5 years ago now. And,
Nice.
yeah. So 2.5 years in, and, got my own business now, Flow State Mental Performance, and I'm helping athletes and military candidates that want to go into, their, special forces or special warfare or, whatever path they're going on, and helping to kind of
Yeah.
mentor them and kind of prep them mentally for their pipelines and training.
Nice. So with your coaching with Flow State Human Performance, is that right?
Yeah, mental performance. Yeah, Flow State Mental Performance.
Yeah. And then you do the candidate work with special operations through Warrior Calling. Am I correct?
Yeah. So I did that with the warrior calling, and I think I've had one client that was a guy who wanted to go to Buds, and he was local, and so I kind of mentored him a little bit in person, but more of that was the mental side. But yeah, with
Yeah.
the warrior calling, which is my more full-time job, I help a buddy of mine that I worked with at Buds. He's a former team guy, and he started this company called the Warrior Calling, and he asked me to come on, pretty much since he started it. And I've been working with him since and doing mental performance and training with the guys. So
Nice. So
yeah.
with working with mental performance, what are some of the like most common mental roadblocks that you see with athletes and these high performers?
Oh gosh. I think the negative self-talk, and I think the pressure that the athletes put on themselves for competition. Um, I think the lack of self-confidence. I think it's used a lot. I think with people in general, even athletes, I think, oh, well, I just didn't have the confidence after that mistake, or I struck out and it ruined my confidence, or it, hurt my confidence for the rest of the game or the next time I went to bat or the next penalty kick or, whatever it might be. And so I think we people as a society, we're very quick to talk negatively about ourselves. You know, it's okay for us to do it, but we don't want anybody else telling us, those negative things. Um, but yeah, I think the negative self-talk is really the biggest that I've seen.
Yeah.
That athletes make. As soon as they make a mistake, it's immediate to, well, why am I doing this? Or I'm not good enough, or how come I can't do this? Or, why am I playing badly today or practicing badly
Right.
today or not up to my potential? And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know when I when I was working with mobility and special warfare, I used to say like that you had to have like really good long-term memory to capture like lessons learned through operations and within in training as well. But the short-term memory needs to be like complete garbage because when I would make mistakes during a training evolution or during an operation, like if I
Mhm.
focused on that mistake I made, it would just snowball into more and more and more and
Yeah.
more mistakes.
Yep.
So, how do you help people break that or improve their self talk and their confidence? Is there anything that
Yeah.
you?
So I think confidence is a byproduct of self-belief. So I think that encouraging people that when they make a mistake, it's okay. Like that's how we learn, right? It's okay to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's not making mistakes. And I think if you can be confident and still make that mistake that you made and be okay with it and learn from it, I think you gain confidence that way. And I think doing the difficult or the hard things or the things that maybe scare you, I think that helps to build that confidence or that self-belief and in turn build that resilience as well to prepare you for the next, big thing in life that, is there to kind of knock you down. And so I think just being able to help them gain that self-belief back or that confidence back
Yeah.
after.
And I think when you're like doing big things, like you need to go into it with a mindset of like big mistakes could happen. You know what I
Right.
mean? And like
Yeah.
have almost like already go into it with this self compassion, self forgiving mindset because like I know, like back to like my days in mobility when I'd have a boss be like, "You really need to we need to start pushing the limits, pushing the limits." I said, "Okay, well then you need to be prepared for perhaps a big loss. Like
Right.
we might sink a boat if you want me to
Yeah.
really push the limits." And those things cost about $2.5 million. Are you willing to risk
Yeah.
that? You know, because I'll put a hole in the side of this boat if you tell me to really push the limits. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so with building confidence, if I can rewind it back, it's to do things that scare you
Mhm.
and to also foster this belief in self. And is there like a practical exercise I could use? Is it mantras? Is it self-talk? Is it meditation? How do I go about doing that?
Yeah, I incorporate all that stuff with a lot of the guys for the warrior calling. I tell them to find a mantra or pick a slogan or even a word that would represent them and their confidence or them trying to be better or, be a better version. And I have my own that I've printed up and I tell myself before certain, before I run an ultra or before I'm, doing something that I know is going to take a lot of energy and effort mentally and physically and so on. So I have my own little mantras and own little, things that I'll tell myself. And I think yeah, that positive self-talk, I think being okay with mistakes and telling yourself it's okay, and you move on from it. And again, you learn from those and when that happens next time, then you're prepared for it, and
Yeah,
same with doing the hard things. If you do the hard thing or the thing that you're scared of or the thing that's very difficult, and what if you're successful the first time, or even the second time? Now you've maybe built this thing up to be bigger than what it is, and then you've,
Hmm.
accomplished it. Or even if it is a big thing and you've accomplished it, and then now you just gotta take that confidence and run with it, because at that point,
Right.
that's when you go do all the hard things, is now you've got this confidence, and you want to carry that over to the next big thing, or the next day,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
the next big thing in life,
Yeah.
that uh, that's there. So I think thinking back to times when you were successful during difficult times,
Hmm.
I think that's can be a huge benefit. To look back at yourself being successful, reminiscing about being
Yeah.
successful and accomplishing something big. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
those two.
And also probably using mental visualizations into the future of like visualizing myself being successful with whatever I'm trying to achieve in the future. And as you said,
Yeah.
also like meeting roadblocks, mistakes, things happening, and then seeing myself overcoming those. Like it's really powerful. I mean, the mind is super powerful. And
Oh
the
my
thing about
gosh.
the
Yeah.
mind too and the nervous system is as I share with folks is that it doesn't know. It doesn't know like what am I making up and what's
Hmm.
actually happening, especially if
Right.
my visualizations are really good. The nervous
Yeah.
system react to that. That's why my
Hmm.
heart rate increases and I begin to sweat a little when I'm anxiously thinking about an appointment later on today that's going to be uncomfortable. um,
Right.
yeah, so we can definitely use that for our advantage,
Yeah.
rather than our disadvantage. And I really like
Mhm.
that too of like doing hard things and using that confidence of like I remember like standing at the finish line of my first marathon and thinking like holy crap, like I did it. And then
Right.
my thought was like, well, if I did this, like, well, what else can I do? You know?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
then I end up doing more and more of that type of stuff. And
Right.
over the years, it's people joke and say that I'm the guy that like I'm undertrained, but I'm overconfident. So that's good.
Yeah, there you
Like
go. That's a good one.
I have confidence that is like delusional type confidence.
Yeah. Uh,
I'll sign up for something that I
I like
certainly
it. If it
not
works.
ready for, and I'll still toe the line and get it done because I have the mental fortitude. Like I'm super confident that like I can do it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I also have mantras. It sounds silly, but I think it was Rocky 3 where he was getting like beat up by Mr. T and he was going, ain't so
Yeah.
bad, ain't so bad, ain't so bad. That's my culture mantra. I'm like, it ain't so bad, ain't so bad, ain't so bad.
Yeah.
Really bad. Like it hurts a lot, but I'm trying to tell myself, like, this ain't so bad. This ain't so bad.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, the one I have is a quote by Marcus Aurelius, and it's if it's endurable, then endure it and stop complaining.
Love
So
it.
I think that one fits for me. It fits, with a lot of my stuff, and especially ultras and
Yeah.
trail running and stuff like that. So, yeah,
That needs to be on a shirt, man. That would be
right.
perfect for a race director to put on their shirt. So if you're a race
Yeah, there
director,
you go.
I want to give you
Yeah,
permission to steal that. But please
yeah.
credit this podcast. Cool. So do you feel like this is where like cold water immersion training comes in too? Like, do you feel like because
Right,
it's
exactly.
it's an easily packaged up like here is something for you to push through, you know?
Right.
So can you talk
Yeah.
some about that? Like, how do you incorporate cold water immersion training into your mental toughness and resiliency?
Yeah, I think the first thing is really like the majority of people don't like the cold, right? Or cold water, especially. No one likes to be in cold water. And so I think first accepting that, I think that's a big thing, is to accept, okay, I know this isn't going to be fun. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable. But I think taking that and then getting into the tub, and then doing the breathing exercises that, I'll coach prior to, um, you know, getting in, doing the proper breathing, the proper form, and getting in, and then really talking them through, just like I was, talked to or spoken to the first time I got in it, just soft, just breathe, relax, embrace it, keep breathing, relax. It's okay. You're fine. You're okay. Nothing's, you're not in any kind of danger. And then, after, 20, 30 seconds, it's like, they're cold, but it's they're embracing it at that point, and it's acceptable. It's not, it's not great, it's not fun, but it's acceptable. And then, they're now doing something that one, they probably didn't think they wanted to do or could do, and they didn't want to do it at first, probably. And so to be able to give this information to people and let them know, like, hey, look, it's not that bad. Here, watch me do it. Or I'm going to demonstrate it and then you guys do it. And I'm going to be here and I'm going to talk you through everything because I know the first couple of times I did it, I forgot the breathing pattern and I was breathing through my mouth and, all of the stuff. And now, after doing it for, so long and practicing it, it now it takes me less than 10 seconds to kind of acclimate, if you will, and really kind of like, release myself into it. I like to kind of say is, just letting yourself go, letting, whatever thoughts and everything's that, things that are going on, like nothing is really going to compare to, sitting in a cold ice tub for, 5 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it is.
Mm,
But afterwards, you just feel rejuvenated. I
yeah.
just feel like it was like a mental and physical reset of stress and, things that have compounded for the last week or 2 weeks or month or however long it's been. Um, and again, I don't know what it is. I don't know how, but, when I get done, I just feel like, okay, I'm good now. I can tackle these things now that, are difficult or that I was apprehensive about or that I
Yeah.
really was putting off or, that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
I think really just letting people know that they can do it and reinforcing, from an outside source and then having them repeat it to themselves and talk to themselves and that sort of thing.
Right.
And I haven't had anybody say, nope, I don't want to do this, or I'm going to get out early, or F you and this sucks and whatever. Yeah, I think it's working.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's worked for me and I'd love to share that with other people because I like to know if that same things or similar things are going on with them and
Yeah.
just kind of letting things go. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard on Dr. Andrew Huberman's podcast that like doing things that you really don't want to do is really
Mm,
good for the mind, really good for the brain. And I
yeah.
also believe I've read on Huberman's or listened to on Huberman's podcast and read some on the research about cold water immersion is that it can 2.5x the dopamine levels in your
Yeah.
system
Hmm.
long after you get out. So I think
Yeah.
some of that, and I think it's also releasing a lot of the feel good chemicals once the parasympathetic nervous system comes online. Like it's fighting that, what it thinks is probably feels as though maybe we're getting into like hypothermia. And then B is probably also some of that mammalian dive reflex, especially if you get into
Yeah.
space and in your nasal cavity. So
Yeah.
the mind thinks the body is diving down, so it starts to slow things
Right.
down and calm you down. So I believe that's probably some of the effects we're feeling after it. I mean, I know like
Hmm.
too, um, after a day at the sauna of ice baths, I feel like $1,000,000. That
Hmm.
night sleep so good, and then the days following afterwards, I'm just like happy for no good reason.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you also do anything with like contrast therapy? Because I do that. I do like steam sauna, dry saunas, and ice baths. Do you
Yeah.
incorporate
I
that at all?
don't. I
Okay.
don't personally, but I'm not against it. I've read a good amount in how beneficial that is as well. And at
Mm,
some point, if I maybe invest in a sauna or one of those portable saunas or something, I might try something like that out. But
yeah.
no, I haven't. I did the contrast therapy when we were at Dev Group. They had the
Huh?
hot tub and the cold tub over in behind the gym.
Hmm.
And I would do the contrast therapy with the hot and cold water.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my only experience doing that kind of contrast therapy with the water and not sauna and cold tub.
Yeah. I think it just cold tub alone with no sauna nearby is like even more of a mental resilience trainer because where I'm at, like I don't see anybody getting in the ice bath unless they've been in the sauna for quite some time. And then that ice
Right.
is looking pretty good when they get out of the sauna that's like 200
Yeah.
degrees or something. And they're like
Yeah.
fighting over who gets into the ice bath first. But what I always do with the ice bath is again, going back to the research, is I make sure that I warm up naturally. Like
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't ice bath and straight back into the sauna because I think you deny yourself a lot of the benefits of warming yourself up naturally. So,
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's, something I tell, everybody, when they get out, like, don't go jump into a hot shower or don't jump into a hot tub or, immediately like, walk around for a few minutes, like just kind of shake your arms out and just kind of,
mhm.
relax. And now you're done and let that dopamine and all those things like
Yeah,
start to like, help you feel good. And but move around and walk around and that kind of thing. And
yeah,
I think yeah, I think there's huge benefits to that, just warming up,
mhm.
like you said, naturally.
Yeah,
And even without like a sauna, but just your own body.
yeah. And I don't think it takes like a whole bunch of time either in the ice bath. Like I do only, but I do like a minute, I do 2 minutes, I do 3 minutes. The max I'll ever do in one is like 5 minutes. And
Mm,
again, going back to Andrew Huberman's podcast and things he talks about with research. And hey, if you're listening to this, Andrew, thanks for tuning in. But
right.
he says that 11 to 12 minutes per week is enough to
Yeah.
get all the benefits. And I
I've
think
heard
anything
that
more
too.
than that is
Yeah.
just like ego. Like people show up and they're like, "Oh, look how tough I am," and they like want to get in the ice bath for 15 minutes, and I'm like, "Dude, you're really just
Right.
hurting yourself. Like, stop. Like,
Yeah.
pressing it."
Yeah. Yeah, there's no benefit. Yeah, there's no benefit after that. Now it's just, you know, I I I I don't go that long either. I think the most if I'm really, in a bad spot for the week or, feeling really depressed or something, I might do like 8 minutes, but I don't do anything more than even eight. Like that's really kind of like not my personal limit, but my personal limit of being in there and not for any negative thing or anything hurtful or damaging, but just my own. But normally I do 5 minutes, and I feel like I'm good with five. Almost always. That's enough. And so,
Yeah,
yeah. So
and I think you'd have to build up to that too, like crawl, walk, run. Like
right, yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
encouraging any listeners to like run down to the local 7-Eleven and get some bags of ice and go back home and soak in it for
Yeah.
5 minutes. Like when I started, like 30 seconds was enough. 10 seconds was enough. Just getting into the thing
Yeah.
was enough, actually.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Exactly.
And I think
Yep.
I started with cold showers before I did any type of ice baths too.
Oh,
That was
okay.
as I started with cold showers. Cold showers
Yeah.
in the winter in New York though, that was plenty
Ooh.
cold. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. I bet. I think cold showers are harder than getting in the ice tub, I think.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How so?
Um, I think it's because the water's constantly moving over your body.
Mm,
That cold water is constantly just moving over you. Whereas in the tub, I try to move around because I want that cold, right? But when you sit there and you're still, you have this little like barrier of heat,
yep.
that is right, around your skin and if you're still like it's bearable, it's a little bit more bearable.
Yep.
But yeah, if you don't move, it's a little easier. Whereas in the shower, it doesn't matter. It's just,
Right.
you know,
Right. Yeah.
dousing on you. So yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
little, I think it's a little more difficult. But yeah,
I've
I don't
never
know.
thought of it that way, but you're absolutely correct because I've said that with like the ice baths when people get in there and they're just like really still and stoic, and people are like, "Oh, like what a stud," and I'm like, "No,
Yeah,
actually, if you really want to be a stud, I'm like, start moving around because
right.
it much colder that way." Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yep,
Right
for
on,
sure.
man. So, let's see, we're coming up on about an hour now. So let's first of all, let's just see. Can you give us a simple, actionable daily habit that someone could implement today? If you were to give somebody like, here's one thing you could do to help with resilience and mental toughness. Could you provide one? actionable thing for someone?
Yeah, I think positive self-talk. I think that's a big one. I think really believing in yourself, and I think that goes back to the positive self-talk where you're talking to yourself and being confident in the things that you're telling yourself, and maybe even a cold shower, jump in a cold shower for a
Nice.
minute or two and build a little bit of resilience. But I really think breathing, breath work, meditating, even I think those things can help build some resilience and just be still, be there, be where your feet
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I think
yeah,
we can combine all of those. So let's do breath work while we're while we're having positive self-talk in the cold shower.
right.
We're probably
Yeah, yeah,
let's stack all those habits on top of each other.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
Yep.
what's next for you in your coaching journey? Is there anything coming up that you want to push out to the audience?
Gosh. So the Warrior Calling, we're doing an event this month. I'm hosting an event in Charlotte or just outside Charlotte area.
Nice.
It's a 1 day event. I'm doing a 2 day event next month, and then we're doing a 4 day event in May. Um, so I'm doing that with the Weird Calling and, obviously, doing the mental training and breath work and stuff with those guys.
Nice.
And as for myself with Flow State, just I've got let's see, two baseball teams that have recently asked me to come talk to them, a high school team and well, two high school teams. So I got that coming up, and yeah,
Nice.
so those two things right now, yeah,
Cool, man. And I'll get
yeah,
links to all that in the show notes too, if you want to check that out. We're calling and flow state, mental
hmm
performance, awesome. And we always wrap up the podcast with the billboard question. So the billboard question is, if you had a billboard that 1 billion people would see, and it can say anything. It can be a quote from you or a quote from someone else, or it can just be a picture. It can be whatever you want. What would your billboard say,
Oh man,
or what would it have on it?
man, that's a good one. Uh, gosh, I think with mental health being such a big thing, I think I'd put I'm happy you didn't give up, and I'm glad you're here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
one, man.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm happy you didn't give up, Chris. I'm glad you're here, man.
yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
glad I'm
Me
here too.
too.
Yeah,
Me
brother.
too. Me too, man.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Hey, make
appreciate
sure you
it.
follow Chris. Follow Chris on the show notes will be the website, and I'll put his Instagram link in there as well. And maybe just try a small mental challenge this week. Maybe it's a cold shower, maybe it's a breath practice, maybe it's just a shift in your self-talk. And make sure that you share this episode with someone that you think can benefit from it. So cool. Thanks a lot for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, cool. Peace. Be well.